Hello everyone, welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I am broadcasting to you live from beautiful Budapest, Hungary, Central Europe. Capital city of Hungary is Budapest. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so today we are continuing with our course sessions. This is course session number 9 and we are getting into specific strategies for the IELTS reading section. Hi, Edward. Hi, Jeffrey. Hi, Lytton. Hi, Rajaram. I hope everybody's doing great. Hi, Mohit. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking, Jeffrey. All right. So again, as usual, our materials are coming from our websites for academic IELTS. Definitely check us out at aehelp.com. And if you are learning for general IELTS, please visit us at IELTShelp.com, where we have lots and lots of materials for you to improve your IELTS band score and meet with success the next time that you sit the IELTS exam. If you haven't visited the Google Play Store yet for our app, please do so. Check for Academic IELTS Help. You should see our logo, download the app, and there's lots of goodies there for you as well. Some free listening materials, reading materials, and so on. All right. So, again, our websites have over 100 hours of video lessons. Some of them are these live classes, but we have many pre-recorded high-definition videos as well. You can find speaking help as well with some practice mock IELTS speaking interview that you can book. Just send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com. There's also some writing and editing services. Just a quick reminder of the schedule right now. We are in Central European time for our broadcasts. This is our schedule from August 21st, which is today, until September the 2nd. So today we're doing course part 9, and then tomorrow we will be doing a member chat only class, speaking part 2, continuing from last week. Then we'll have part 10 of the course, another member chat only on the 24th. And then from August 25th until September the 1st, we are taking a summer break. And then I will be back September 2nd with 5 days a week live streaming. So please make a note of that. I'll also put that into the comments and posts on our YouTube page as well, so you know our YouTube channel. All right. So let's jump to today's lesson. These are adapted PowerPoints from the interactive course that you find on our websites. And we are looking at some reading here. And specifically, we're looking at question strategies. Let me make the screen a little bit darker. This is a bit more clear. Let's see. All right. So before I get into the specific question strategies, let me ask any of the viewers, so there's roughly about 100 students watching right now, anybody who watched last week's class and learned about power reading, did anybody practice that? So any of the viewers who are watching this stream, did you try power reading at home? That was a reading practice strategy that I taught last week, which you should do when you're getting ready for the IELTS exam. And that strategy incorporates reading fluency and comprehension, separates those two skills and then puts them together. So Jeffrey says, yes, I did the fast read, and Geo News says, yes, I did it. How do you feel about it? So can you give me some feedback? Was it good? Did it work? Did you hate it? Did you love it? What were your feelings about it? How did it work for you? Okay, that's an honest answer, Dada. If you didn't attend the class, you don't know what I'm talking about. In that case, definitely check out that class. It is available on the channel. If you check for the videos, it will be the last class, so it will be course session number 8. Hi, Manisha. All right. Jeffrey says it made my mouth muscles sore. That's good. It probably means it's working. It's just like going to the gym. If you go to the gym and you lift some weights and your arms and legs are sore, if you're working them out, that probably means you're doing a good job. All right, well, let's get into today's lesson while you're contemplating on those last week's strategies. So today, looking at the reading section, we're looking at question strategies. There are 11 different kinds of questions that you can see in IELTS reading. I'm going to give you some advice. It's up to you to practice and then get feedback to make sure that you are doing a good job practicing these strategies. Now, just a review from the beginning of our reading section lessons. Again, remember, there are some questions that are okay to read before you read the passage. These questions have information that's paraphrased from the passage, so it's included in the passage. You will just see it with different words. Okay? Matching information, category table completion, summary completion, filling in the blanks, finding paragraph headings. That's kind of a unique one. We'll talk more about that. And then diagram label completion. So these 6 types of questions, you should skim read these before you read the passage. They will help you to understand the passage. Hi, Prajim. All right, and then of course there are a couple of other types of questions, 5 in fact, that have a lot of information which is not in the passage. It's either wrong information or extra information. And you should not read these kinds of questions before you read the passage because they will only confuse you during the reading part of the test. Again, remember, brains don't work, human brains don't work in a linear type of fashion. So don't read matching sentence endings, true, false, not given especially, matching features, multiple choice, don't read the choices, and yes, no, not given. All right? So these ones are okay to read before, these ones not so much. All right, so here are a few rules to keep in mind when you're answering questions in the reading section, and these are kind of general rules. So these apply to all parts of the reading. Make sure you always read the instructions of the question. So if it's 1 word, you know that you're only supposed to write 1 word. If it's 2, make sure you write 2 words. Pay attention to the numbers. Sometimes students make huge mistakes when they write answers into the wrong spaces on the answer sheet, so always pay attention to the numbers of the questions. If you're unclear about a question, so you don't know what it's saying or asking you, try to paraphrase it. So try your best to express that question using different words to try to get you some clarity. Okay? Now this one's important as well, so don't jump around in the questions in the reading section of IELTS. You should answer the reading questions in the same order as they're given. Generally, they do follow the order of the information in the passage. In some cases, they jump around, but most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, the questions for the reading are in the same order as the information in the passage. So don't jump around when you're trying to answer questions. Answer them in order. Remember, they do get more and more difficult as you go along, okay? If you're not sure about an answer, if you're having a really tough time, don't waste a lot of time, okay? So for one question in the reading, you should spend about 30 to 40 seconds maximum on one question, average, okay? If you feel like you're getting stuck and you're spinning the same ideas, same thoughts on the question and you're thinking, I have no idea, just stop yourself, take a deep breath, continue on. So skip that question, circle it, put a star beside it so you don't forget to come back to it, and then come back to it later. Sometimes when you see the other questions, they can help you figure out a difficult question that you didn't know the answer to. So you can leave a question and come back to it later, but try to go in the same order as the questions. And then a good rule of thumb is never change answers unless you're absolutely sure that you've made a mistake. So once you give your answer, stay with it. Don't change it. If you're just kind of sure, if you're like, well, no, maybe it is, no, maybe it isn't, just don't change it. The only time you should ever change an answer is if you're 1,000% sure that you've made a mistake. Otherwise, just keep your first answer. It's usually the correct one, okay? So, those are some general rules. Now, let's read an IELTS reading passage, and then we'll look at each of those 11 types of questions separately and discuss some important points and strategies to keep in mind. So here we have mountains of ice. This should be familiar. We're using this as an example for a lot of the different questions. So the text, if you've seen some of the previous classes, shouldn't be too difficult. Again, let's just read, focus on the information, what it's about, why it's talking about this, how it's talking about this, and then we'll look at the questions. So, read with me. Mountains of ice. The word iceberg derives, oh, and girls and guys, please read with me aloud, okay? So this is your chance to practice your pronunciation, your fluency, form the words, use the muscles of your tongue and mouth. Read with me aloud, okay? Mountains of ice. The word iceberg derives from the Dutch word ijsberg, meaning ice mountain. Icebergs are sections of glaciers that have broken off during the warmer summer months and float freely in open water. Icebergs are typically found in open water, predominantly around Greenland and Antarctica. The characteristics of icebergs, their historical impact, and the methods we employ today to monitor them are important topics. The reason icebergs exist is because of the difference between the density of ice and the density of salt water. The density of ice is approximately 920 kilograms per cubic meter, while the density of salt water is approximately 1,025 kilograms per cubic meter. Because ice is less dense than water, it floats. However, because the difference in densities is so small, only about 10% of the iceberg is visible above the ocean surface. The rest of the iceberg hides below the water. This is the origin of the familiar expression, tip of the iceberg, used to describe a situation where only part of the problem is noticeable. Icebergs range in height from 1 meter all the way up to over 75 meters above sea level. The height measures the visible portion of the iceberg. The tallest icebergs may have a total height of over 650 meters, including their underwater portion. The largest ever recorded was 168 meters above the water, meaning the entire height of this floater was likely greater than 1,500 meters. For reference, that is twice the height of most skyscrapers. Different sized icebergs have different name classifications. The smallest icebergs are called brash ice. The next category up in size is called growlers, and the ones after that are called bergy bits. For whatever reason, after those three classes, the people in charge of naming the icebergs got a little less creative. The next classes simply range from small to very large. Icebergs can be massive objects. Very large icebergs can weigh more than 200,000 tons. The largest iceberg ever recorded was over 30,000 square kilometers in area. Again, for reference, that is the approximate size of the country of Belgium. The most famous iceberg in history is undoubtedly the one which eventually sunk the English ship Titanic off the coast of Newfoundland in 1912. At that point in time, there was no central group which monitored iceberg activity. Ships relied on lookouts to spot the icebergs. For the Titanic, the unfortunate attitude was that any iceberg big enough to do damage to the ship would be seen in time. This attitude was, of course, catastrophically wrong. The main reason it failed was the remarkable calmness of the water that ill-fated night. The easiest way to spot an iceberg from afar is to see waves crashing up against it. But on the night the Titanic sank, there were no such helpful waves. For all intents and purposes, the iceberg was invisible until it was too late. The captain swerved at the last minute, but as the side of the ship scraped across the iceberg, the hull of the ocean liner tore open. Things still may have been fine had it not been for the poorly designed watertight compartments. It turns out that when too many compartments were affected, the water was simply able to spill over to all the other compartments. This was an engineering defect that contributed to the Titanic sinking. Again, remember, keep reading with me aloud. We're almost done. After the disaster of the Titanic, maritime authorities realized that a system needed to be put into place to monitor icebergs so that such a catastrophe would not be repeated. By 1914, the International Ice Patrol, IIP, was formed. Their purpose was to track all the relevant meteorological and oceanographical data and to chart the movement of all major icebergs. Today, technology is used to track iceberg data. The Canadian Space Agency has multiple radar satellites which send microwaves off the ocean surface and record the reflection to track the movement of the icebergs. Maritime vessels have access to this information in real time, which allows them to know exactly where any local icebergs are at any moment, meaning that a repeat of the Titanic disaster is virtually impossible. Okay, so the first question that we're going to look at here is what's called matching information, okay? Now, matching information type questions basically give you a piece of information, a statement, and say, okay, match this information with the reading. So where in the reading do you find this piece of information, or which paragraph, okay? So they'll give you a sentence, and then you have to match it. You'll see one here in a second, okay? So this is a typical matching information type question. It'll say reading passage 1 has 6 paragraphs, A to F, okay? Which paragraph contains the following information? And then you get a piece of information. The reason why only a small part of an iceberg floats above water, okay? So here you have to figure out where, in which paragraph from A to F does this piece of information come from. Now, how do you do that? So how do you do that? What should you pay attention to? Can anybody tell me if some students are following these lessons regularly and you paid attention to the last couple lessons for reading, critical analytical reading, you should be able to give me some good information of how I can figure out this type of information in the reading. What kind of skills I can use to identify where this is coming from. Okay, so Manisha says, well, the reason, so the answer to this is ice is less dense, or ice density. Right, so ice density is the reason why only a small part floats above water. Now notice that with this type of question, it's very difficult, maybe impossible, to try to skim or scan the passage to get the correct answer, because this is not necessarily contained anywhere in the passage, but you actually have to solve this answer like a math equation. You have to figure out that the answer is ice density, and then you try to figure out which paragraph did I read about ice density, right? So Pachu says, yeah, pay attention to the what questions. And Jubilant James says, yeah, think about it critically. So what, why, and how will help you to figure out where this information is coming from. Absolutely. So if you think about this, the reason why only small part of the iceberg floats above water, they even give you the word. It's the why. So there's a paragraph in here which gives the reason of the why question here. And of course, that answer, as Manisha correctly identified, is the ice density. So now all I have to remember is which paragraph talks about ice density. Okay? So which paragraph had that? Now, if we're continuing to use our logic, and we know that this reading passage is focusing on icebergs, it probably makes sense to discuss icebergs' existence early on in the passage. So I should probably find this information somewhere in A or B or C. And I can see some of you are saying that. So Lytton's saying, yeah, it's got to be somewhere in the beginning, A or B. Pravin says maybe A, Monica says maybe C. Now, we can figure that out in a minute, but just let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's take a look at these strategies here, okay? So one step or one strategy that you can use for this is paraphrasing and critical thinking. Now, that's what we're doing right now is the critical thinking, okay? And of course, another step that we can take is paraphrasing the question, okay? Now, the other strategy here is we might be able to skim read if there are names or dates or some unique words. So if you see a name or a date or a unique word in the question, you might be able to skim read for that, but it should not be your number one strategy. It's not the most effective, okay? Be careful when you see the same name more than once or the same date. Okay, again, skim reading is not the most effective. And then strategy 4, always pay attention to negative antonym paraphrasing, okay? In this case, we kind of have that type of paraphrasing. The reason why only a small part of the iceberg floats above water. So here it says a small part of the iceberg floats above water. Another way to say that is a large part of the iceberg is hidden below the water. Okay, so the opposite of only a small part of the iceberg floats above water is a large part of the iceberg is hidden below the water. So I might not find this here, I might not find the question this way, but if I can paraphrase it like this, I might be able to find that information. And in fact, that's what we do find in this case. So have a look at where the answer is coming from using those strategies. Now, of course, if you have our online course, academic one here, general one here, then you actually have an interactive quiz which tests your knowledge of that information. So here's the answer, and no surprise, it is coming from paragraph B. I think a few of you answered that well. And if you said A or C, you're thinking the right way. So you're identifying that this information has to be somewhere in the beginning. So the reason icebergs exist is because of the difference of density of ice. So as one of the students said correctly, okay? Because ice is less dense than water, it floats. However, because the differences in densities is so small, only about 10% of the iceberg is visible above the ocean surface. So here is the paraphrase of that question, okay? And then here is that opposite paraphrase that I just showed you. The rest of the iceberg hides below the water, okay? So now you're sure that the answer is B. Again, notice that for this kind of question, skimming and scanning will not really help you, okay? So paragraph B is the correct answer. So that is how these matching information type questions work, okay? Really pay attention to the what, why, how aspect of the question. Again, this is why it's so important to practice that analytic, critical thinking so that you can answer these questions quickly. Skimming and scanning will not be useful for this kind of a question. Does that make sense for everybody? Does anybody have any questions about these strategies or what I just did there? Is it clear? Is it unclear? Do you want me to explain it a little bit more? Give me some feedback, ladies and gents. Yeah, so here's the reason. Because ice is less dense than water, it floats, okay? So again, usually the way information is contained, especially in body paragraphs, and notice that this is a body paragraph, it's paragraph B, usually this part here is the what. In most cases, you'll find the why here, and you'll find the how information here. So this question was asking the why. It was saying the reason why icebergs, or why only a small part of the iceberg is visible. And then here's that why answer coming from the middle, okay? All right, Raj says that's clear. James says, yeah, it's clear. Good. Sanket, yeah, you will be able to watch this live lesson later in the recorded version on the YouTube channel, but you can get this whole interactive course, and it looks a lot more pretty as well, for your phone or your tablet when you join our websites, okay? That's the best way to do it. It costs a little bit of money, but it will really be a lot of help for you to get a high score the next time you sit the IELTS exam. Okay, let's take a look at the next type of reading question. So we're just looking at question type 2. There's no real reason for the numbers here. It's just to kind of give you order. What's more important is paying attention to the question type. So here we're focusing on category and table completion. You'll see the question here in a moment. Basically, just think about a table here. Okay. Generally, you have a table with columns and rows, and then you'll have some blanks with some missing information. In some cases, you write just one word from the reading passage. In other cases, you might need 2 words. So let's have a look at this kind of a question. And we'll come back to the strategies, okay? This one is just made up for practice purpose here. So usually the instructions say something like this: complete the table below. In this case, write no more than 3 words and or a number for each. So you can have a word, and then a number. Or you could have a word, a number, and a word, okay? But you have 3 objects, okay? You will not have something like word, number. Be very careful, the or at. These do count as a word, okay? So if you have 4 objects, so you have 4 words or 3 words and a number, you will get that wrong. So pay attention always to these instructions, okay? Now, what should we do? So when you get this kind of a table, this is a very simple example. You could have a much bigger table with 3 or 4 questions in the reading section. What do you do with that? So what should you do with this kind of a table? Well, let's have a peek at some of these strategies a little bit more closely. First of all, pay attention to the information that you have, all right? And I don't mean just look at the words in the table and then quickly start skim reading or scanning the passage for those words. That's not the right way. Look at the words, look at the columns, look at the rows, see if you have some titles to give you reference points, and see what kind of a logic the table is trying to present you with, okay? If you see diagrams in the reading, sometimes in the academic you can have that or you can see that. They can often be connected to these questions, so pay careful attention to that, okay? Stay organized for this type of a question. Sometimes you're comparing subjects, like different types of icebergs, for example, small icebergs versus big icebergs. And of course, pay close attention to paraphrasing. Now, Words of comparison can be hints. So if you see words like however, but, also, on the other hand, sometimes that will help you to reference the missing information from the table or diagram. I'll show you what I mean. I know you might be a little bit confused right now, but I'll show you what I mean by this with the previous question, okay? So here's the question again, okay? The tallest iceberg recorded above water is something, okay? Now, paying attention to this, the tallest, and then paying attention to this M here. This M, of course, is short for meter. So right away, I know that this needs to be a number, okay? Now, my logic tells me that this number is greater than 10. So remember that in writing, numbers 0 to 10 are written as words. And then usually, in most cases, anything greater than 10 is written as numbers, okay? All the way to 1,782,483, okay? Just as an example number. All right, so 0 to 10, you're looking at words, but anything above that, you're looking at numbers. So here, I'm most likely looking for some number, okay? Now here, I have another piece of information, the largest iceberg in area, and that is something square kilometers, okay? So again, in the reading, you're putting your answers directly into your answer sheet. When you do that, do not include MSQKM. If it's given in the question, you do not include that information, okay? So for example, if the correct answer is 180 meters, if you write 180 meters into your answer sheet, they will probably mark it wrong because all you needed is the number, okay? They give you the word or the abbreviation meters. So in this case, you do not include that into your answer sheet. You just go for that number. All right. So here I know that I'm looking for numbers. Looking for numbers is fairly simple. I also know that this information is probably coming from paragraph C or D because that's where it would make sense for the author to put specific examples of large icebergs into the reading passage itself. So here in the live course on your phone or tablet or computer, you have an interactive quiz that helps you with this. We don't have that. So here we have paragraph C. Okay. Now I know that I'm looking for numbers to fill this table. So icebergs range in height from 1 meter. Notice what I said, that words are used for 1 to 10. So you don't see the number there. But as soon as we get up to 75 meters above sea level, you see the number 75. Okay. Now, I know that I'm looking for the tallest or the highest iceberg. Just give me a second. I'll bring the screen back up for us. I've played around with the settings a lot, ladies and gentlemen, but for some reason, there is no way to turn off this 30-minute timer, which is unfortunate, but it's just a little bit of a break. Okay, so here I can see the word the tallest. I think the question might have said highest. So it said iceberg may have a total height of over 650 meters, including the underwater. The largest ever recorded was 168 meters above the water. Okay, so 168 meters above the water. Okay, so here it says the iceberg, tallest iceberg recorded above water. So I know that my answer there is 168. And then if I keep going, the next one that I'm looking for is the largest square meter or area of an iceberg, okay? And hopefully, if you're doing visualization, and again, I cannot emphasize enough, ladies and gentlemen, how important visualizing is during the reading section. Why do I say that? Why am I bringing up visualization right now? Manisha, James, you have the right answer. Dota, you have the right answer. But before we even say, okay, that's the right answer, why am I emphasizing visualization in this case? Why could visualization really help me to quickly find the correct answer for this second question in this table completion? Why? So remember again what I said, that being able to give correct answers, it's a great skill, but knowing why you're giving correct answers is very important. That's the key. That's the magic to mastering your mind and information. So why am I focusing on visualization? That's right, Manisha. Visualization does help to recall information, but in this specific example, what should you have visualized? So what should a good reader have seen while reading this passage to remember exactly where this 30,000 is and find it really quickly, or even remember the number? So what should the reader have seen? Not the number. So yeah, you're right, Jeffrey. They should have seen the iceberg. What kind of an iceberg should this person have seen? Yeah, what kind of an image of an iceberg? So I don't think a person can actually imagine a 30,000 square kilometer iceberg, but the person can imagine something else. How big is that iceberg? So here's that 30,000 square kilometers, right? And we can search for those words and find them. But where I can really figure this out is this one here. Okay, so it says that this iceberg is approximately the size of the country of Belgium. Okay, so if I'm a good reader and if I'm visualizing this, that's a very unique and incredible piece of information, that you can have a piece of ice floating in the ocean that's the size of the country of Belgium. Belgium is not a small country, girls and boys. If you look at the map of Europe, Belgium is one of the biggest countries of Europe. It's quite a sizable country. And if you imagine a piece of ice floating around in the ocean that big, that would be quite startling indeed. So if you're an active reader and you're visualizing that, then remembering for this question that the largest area for an iceberg is found very close to this piece of information would be very, very quick. So again, visual reading, okay? Visual reading is very, very, very important. All right. So here, if I were doing the exam and I did this question, I wouldn't actually be looking for the 30,000. I'd be looking for where I read about the iceberg the size of Belgium, and then finding this answer here. Okay. And then here I see square kilometers, so I know that I'm safe and my answer is correct. All right. So here we go. Again, just to double check the question's answers coming from the right places. The largest ever recorded was 168 meters above the water. And so the answer is 168. Notice that there's no meters there, okay? And then the second answer, of course, is the largest iceberg ever recorded was over 30,000 square kilometers in area. And that is approximately the size of the country of Belgium. Now, for numbers, make sure you just use the numbers, okay? So don't write 30,000, okay? So some students might be tempted to write 30,000. That's okay, but if you make a spelling mistake, forget the H or forget a U, then it's going to be wrong. So the safest way is just use the number, okay? You don't need the period after, just the number, all right? And that's the safest way to make sure that you're not losing easy marks for spelling mistakes, okay? All right. Now, let's have a look at another type of question. So again, all of these questions, notice they're questions that you should review before you read the passage in the official IELTS exam. The strategies that I'm showing you, you should be practicing while you're getting ready for the IELTS so that you can use them during the IELTS exam. Summary completion questions, you notice this red here, wabam, that's really important. They're paraphrased. So basically, the IELTS people will take a part of that 600-word passage and they'll squish it together into a summary that's about half the length of what you see in the passage. So let's say that they take 2 paragraphs, like 300 words, and they'll squeeze it into like 120 words, okay? Now those 120 words are paraphrased. Of course, they're not going to give you the exact same words as what you saw in the passage. Otherwise, even a monkey could answer this question, because all you need to do is just match up the missing words with the passage, right? So don't expect to see the same words in the summary of the question as in the passage. It will be paraphrased. So here you really need to remember the different techniques of paraphrasing. What are those different techniques of paraphrasing? So what are the different techniques of paraphrasing? I know some students know these forward and backwards, and that's great. I really want all of our viewers to know techniques of paraphrasing forward and backward, inside and out. It's very important. So there's a couple of our members jumping in on that. Grammar, definitely. Synonyms, yes, Manisha, absolutely. What else? Miriam says antonyms with negatives. That's right, James. Yeah. Antonyms with negatives, grammar, synonyms. That's right, Jeffrey. Expressions, so phrasal verbs, collocations. Yeah, those are different ways to paraphrase. Idioms, right? Those are different ways to paraphrase. There's one more. I haven't seen anybody put it up there yet. And there's also description. Don't forget description, okay? Description is an important one. Description like it's round, it's red, it grows on a tree, it's delicious, it's sweet, it's an apple, okay? So describing is a way of paraphrasing. So as I mentioned, these questions usually come from one paragraph of the passage, so it's easy to check your answers, okay? So it's a good idea to skim read to make sure that you have the right answers. They do require the correct words, okay? Now, you should think of the answers on your own and then skim read to check that they're correct, not just skim read to try to find them. Let's have an example of this in a second here. Yeah, looking at the words, if you have longer words, identifying the prefix, root, and the suffix can help you out. I'll do a full lesson on prefix, root, and suffix so that we can get a little bit more intimate with that and use it more effectively. And then, of course, with these summary completion type questions, this strategy is very important, strategy number 4, which basically says that, hey, don't rush, okay? Remember, slow and steady wins the race. So when you complete the summary, it's a really good idea to read the summary to make sure that it makes sense, okay? You can easily catch some bad mistakes that way. Okay, and that's what strategy 5 is saying. So strategy 4, sorry, is saying check the grammar. So look at the words after and before to make sure that the word form and the grammar makes sense. And then strategy 5 is read the summary to make sure that it's sensible and grammatically sound. Okay, we'll do that here in a second. So notice the instructions here. You choose just one word only, okay, from the passage. So here's a little summary. There's a whole long paragraph that talks about the sinking of the Titanic, the famous boat that hit an iceberg off the coast of Newfoundland and sank in 1912. There's probably about 150 words that talk about that in the passage. And then here you see about a 60-word summary from that, okay? So, because there was no internal group which monitored icebergs in 1912, it was the sole responsibility of the to make sure there were no icebergs in the ship's path. So, if I read until here, this summary completion, from this information, I should realize that this is what kind of a word? So what type of a word goes into my first blank just by using my thinking, my inference, my analytical thinking, my logic? I realize that this has to be a noun. That's right. Good for you, James, for putting that in there. So it's a noun. Not only is it a noun, but it has to be what kind of a noun? Very good, Pachu. Very good, Naveen. So it's a noun. What kind of a noun? So I can get even more detail here. So it was the sole responsibility of the. Well, who bears responsibility? It's a person. It's not a proper noun, James. It's a person noun, okay? So it's a noun, and it should be a person. So hopefully you can figure out both of these pieces of information, right? So I know that if I have to go back and search for this, then I need to be looking for a person, some kind of a position, okay? Anybody know the name of the position on the boat for the person that's looking for danger in the water, like icebergs or rocks or large floating debris or trees? Anybody know what that's called? If you just take a guess, a logical guess of what kind of a... Okay, so Jeffrey says, is it a watchman? Maybe. Is it a captain, maybe, Manisha says? Captain? Now, be very careful, Miriam, because there is no international group, so it cannot be the IIP, okay? It's actually a lot more simple than that. You'll see it in a second here, but we know that it's a person noun, and you're taking some good guesses, which is fine. You might find something similar. We'll see in a moment. Let's keep going. So, the chief reason the iceberg wasn't detected was the something of the sea that night. So here, if I'm looking at this sentence here, okay, so the chief reason the iceberg wasn't detected was the something of the sea that night. Here, I should figure out that the word is what? What type of a word? Is it a noun? Is it an adverb, an adjective, a verb? So what's missing here? So Jeffrey says it's a noun. Pachu says it's a noun. Litton says, hey, it's got to be some kind of an adjective. Okay. Well, the word the here, okay, tells me that it's got to be some kind of a noun. Okay, so grammatically, it's a noun. But if I look at this piece here, of the sea that night, I can definitely see where Miriam and James and Baswana say, hey, it's got to be an adjective. Okay. So, you're right and you're wrong, okay? Because the adjective is calm. So you're right, like a calm person, right? Somebody who's just chilling is a calm person. And calm is correct as the adjective, and in most cases it is used as an adjective. But in this case, because of the sentence grammar, it needs to be used as a noun. Now, if you have some good English skills, then you probably know that the noun form is calmness. Okay? It's the state of being calm. So, here, the missing word then is calmness, not calm. Because if you say was the calm of the sea that night, you will get it wrong, okay? So it has to be calmness, all right? The word form matters, But again, if you don't know that, so you're like, hey, Adrian, come on, man, I'm happy to know the word calm. I don't know the word calmness. I've never used that before. Don't worry. Just have a look at the passage. If you know what the word is, you can say, hey, wait a second. I don't know the noun form of that, but this has to be a noun because of the word the. So I'm going to just quickly check this paragraph to make sure that I have the correct answer. So let's do that, okay? Oh, sorry, I just realized that we have a third one there. Before I go spoiling it, let's look at number 3, okay? So here it's calmness. Here we know it's a person noun. We'll check that out in a second. Here, let's keep going. So again, with summary completion, read the whole shebang. So read all the details, okay? So because of this, there were no waves crashing against the iceberg, making it difficult to spot. The captain swerved, but the iceberg scraped the side of the ship, ripping the something of the ship. So here, again, we see the here, so we know that this is also a noun, and we know that it's some part of the ship. So ripping the something of the ship. So it's a part of the ship. Now, here's a boat. Okay. Anybody knows what this part of the boat is called? Some good vocabulary learning here. If not, you'll obviously have to search for this word. So Caritas says, hull, shell, body. Choose one, Caritas. One of those is correct. Okay. Manisha, you're absolutely right. That is called the hull of the boat. Okay. It's called the hull. The hull of the boat. So if you know that it's the hull of the boat or the hull of the ship, you can just put it in there, hull. Okay, now there's 2 correct ways to do it. Hull, spelled H-U-L-L, all small, or you could put it in like that as well, all capital. It's okay to use all capital, as I've mentioned before, but careful not to do this where you write hull like that. That would be wrong. This is not a proper noun. It's just a part of the ship. So having a capital H is confusing. And it's incorrect English, okay? So be very careful with how you put your answers into your answer sheet. This is okay, all capitals or all small letters. Don't jump between the two either. If you've decided that you're going to give all your answers using capital letters, then do that for the whole exam, listening and reading. Don't switch between upper and lower case, okay? All right. So again, in the actual course, you would have a quiz here, all right? And then here's that nice big long paragraph where all of this information is being summarized from. So here, if I'm skim reading now for the name of a person, okay? So here we go. All right. Talking about the Titanic, Newfoundland, and then here, ships relied on lookouts to spot icebergs. So what's the name of the person on a boat who's responsible for making sure that they see dangerous objects in the ocean? They're called lookouts. What's the word that is paraphrasing the word responsible? Okay. So it's not a bad guess there with watchman. Jeffrey, it was very close. It's a lookout or lookouts. What's the word that's paraphrasing the word responsible in the question? So the question says, is responsible. Again, I'm just emphasizing how important paraphrasing is. Urvashi says the word rely, in this case, written as relied because it's past tense. And you're absolutely correct, creative man and Urvashi Basvana. You're absolutely right. The word relied tells me that lookouts are responsible to spot the icebergs. Okay? So again, paraphrasing. I've shown you visualization. Now I'm emphasizing paraphrasing for you, okay? Good. All right. So now we're going here. The main reason it was failed was the remarkable calmness of the water that ill-fated night. So here's the word calmness, and instead of the sea, it says the water, okay? Instead of extremely, it says remarkable, all right? So again, some more paraphrasing, but here I can see that my answer is calmness, C-A-L-M-N-E-S-S, okay? All right, and then I'm looking for the part of the boat. So the easiest way to spot it, okay, is to crash up against it. All right, the captain swerved the last minute. Ship scraped across the iceberg. The hull of the ocean liner tore open. Okay, so there's my answer. There's the word hull. And instead of ship or boat, it's saying ocean liner. In this case, ship is being paraphrased as ocean liner. Okay, so again, lots of paraphrasing with these summary completion type questions. All right. Okay, so again, make sure to practice those strategies. Here you have, again, the answers. So number 1, lookouts. 2, calmness. 3, the hull. So good job there. All right, now we have filling in the blanks. Any questions so far with summary completion type questions? Are we good to go with filling in blanks? By the way, really nice participation from everyone today. Very good for a lot of you who are giving answers, explanations. You're clearly staying with the lesson. It's good for you. Yes, Ibrahim, this video will be available on the channel about an hour after we're done the live stream. All right, so Doda says, let's just keep going. So let's do that. So filling in the blanks, the reason we've put this as type number 4 is because it's very, very similar to summary completion. So the way that you can think about filling in the blanks type questions is it's basically like a summary completion, but instead of having the connected summary, you have individual sentences with missing information. So 1 to 3 words, okay? And then you have to identify what's missing and then put in the correct word. Now, for this one too, make sure to read these questions. Pay really close attention to the words that come before and after, just like we were doing with the summary completion, okay? So identify, is it a noun that's missing? Is it a verb? Is it an adjective, an adverb? Or is it a multiple? Is it a verb and an adverb? So pay attention to that. Sometimes it will be 2 pieces, not just 1, okay? So it could even be an article missing as well. Okay, so during the your review time, read the whole sentence with your answer to make sure that it's correct. There is no review time. That's a bit of a typo, but in this case, what I mean here is that when you're putting in your answer into the answer sheet, read the full question with your answer to make sure that it makes sense. Don't leave these blanks, okay? Use your common sense. Guess if you have to. Just take a word from the reading that you think is the right answer. There are no negative marks for wrong answers, of course. Okay, so here's a couple of examples. To avoid a Titanic-like disaster in the future, something formed the International Ice Patrol, or the IIP. So what's missing from here? It's the noun. And what kind of a noun? So I can take this one step further. So if I read this sentence carefully, I can figure out that it's a missing noun here. What kind of a noun is missing here? Can anybody tell me what type of a noun? Manisha says, I think this one's got to be a proper noun, and there are a couple people saying that as well. I'm sorry I can't read Cyrillic, so I can't read the Russian name. If you want to tell your name for me, then I'll use that in the future when I see that come up. But yeah, you're right. It's probably a proper noun. So I can figure out that this is a proper noun. Now, proper nouns, for those of you who are not overly familiar with English grammar, proper nouns are like names, okay? So a name is a proper noun. So here it's the name of a person, of an organization, or something. Again, if you're a very visual reader, you should have been able to figure this one out. Okay. Now, the second one, the Canadian Space Agency bounces something off the water to measure iceberg movement. Okay. Now, I said bounces something, so right away I know that this is a noun as well. Okay. All right, let's see. Can anybody figure these out? Can anybody figure out the answer to these two questions? So what are the answers? Remember, no more than 2 words. Okay, Manisha says that this one is probably maritime authorities. It's coming at the end of the passage. Yep, this should be a common noun. As we figured out, this might be a common noun as well. It could be a name, but it could be a common noun as well. So keep your possibilities open. Another strategy that a couple of you are using who watch these classes regularly is, again, that what, why, how, and logic of the passage. So obviously, this information, to avoid a Titanic-like disaster in the future, would come somewhere near the end of the passage. Okay? So a good guess is maritime authorities. And for this one, did anybody get it? You don't bounce satellites off water. That would be very expensive. Satellites cost millions, if not billions of dollars. So we don't want to bounce satellites off water. Bounce means bounce, right? Like a ball bouncing. Okay. So what can you bounce off water? Miriam says maybe microwave. Jeffrey says, how about sound waves? Okay, yeah, so your best guesses here, if you're just using your logic, right, is radio waves, sound waves, maybe lasers, if we're trying to be really cool, okay, or microwaves. And you know what? It could be any one of these. What do? Check for that. But it's a good idea, if you have good logic, good visualization skills, that you keep these in mind so that you know it's likely going to be one of these words. Now, again, if you're a good visual reader and you have good logic, you can probably answer at least one of the 2 questions without looking at the passage. Okay? So the answer is coming from here, from this paragraph. This is coming at the very end of this passage. After the disaster of the Titanic, maritime authorities realized that a system needed to be put into place to monitor icebergs so that such a catastrophe would not be repeated. So there's your answer for number 1, maritime authorities. By 1914, the International Ice Patrol, IIP, was formed. Their purpose was to track all the relevant meteorological and oceanographical data to chart the movement of all major icebergs. Today, technology is used to track iceberg data. The Canadian Space Agency, so here's where I said it's easy to search for those keywords, okay? So it's easy to find names and dates. And because the question has Canadian Space Agency in it, you could search for that. Okay, has multiple radar satellites. Sorry, that was messy. Has multiple radar satellites which send microwaves off the ocean surface. So which send microwave off the ocean surface means that they're bouncing these microwaves. Okay, so microwaves is the correct answer for that second question. All right. Okay, so there you see it again where the answers are coming from. So first one is maritime authorities, and the second one is microwaves. All right. So that is all the information for today. We've covered 4 of the 11 different kinds of questions that you could see in your IELTS reading. By the way, this is kind of the same in general as well as academic. So the passages are different, but you can pretty much get the same kinds of questions in general IELTS as well, just for shorter passages. Again, all of what you saw right now is coming from our website. So if you want the full interactive course with all of those wonderful quizzes and 6 original practice exams, 100 hours of videos, for academic IELTS, do go to aehelp.com, join the full course there. And for general IELTS, check us out at gieltshelp.com and join the full course there. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen, about these 4 different kinds of questions that we covered today and about the different strategies that I hinted at for what you can use? Okay. So Laugh Out Loud XD says, hey, what about time management for reading? I'm going to do a full lesson about time management, or, well, not maybe a full, but a significant portion of a lesson for time management. That's a part of the course. It talks about that. Points to keep in mind for time management. Remember, some questions you do not read before the passage. They are confusing. Don't waste time on that. Remember, skimming and scanning don't work for all kinds of questions and don't work as a main strategy for the reading section. You need to be able to read the passages in no more than maximum 10 minutes, leaving you 10 minutes for the answers. Okay? Naveen, good question. So Naveen's asking, the summary completion, do the answers lie in a single paragraph? No, not always. Good question, Naveen. I've seen lots of IELTS exams. In some of them, it's from one paragraph where the paragraph is a very long paragraph. And in some, it could be 2. I think maybe I've seen where it's 3 as well. But definitely in some reading passages, you need to look at 2 paragraphs because the summary is summarizing both of them. They'll usually be a little bit shorter. Okay? Lytton, that will be coming up at the end as well. Eugen, you are very, very welcome. Thank you for the waves. Okay. All right, girls and guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you pulled some important strategies from this class. Again, remember, practice does make perfect. You really need to enhance your critical analytical reading skills. Practice that power reading. Use it. It will help you. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a members chat class. We will be continuing with part 2 speaking from last week. I'm looking forward to getting some of your responses until tomorrow. That was homework from last week, so try to catch up on that. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Keep up the good studies. I wish you sweet dreams if you're going to bed. If it's late in your country, wake up energized tomorrow. Much love to all of you. Bye for now.